Good evening, everybody. Once again, this is the UFC 157 post-fight recap with Bear Thunder Heart. And tonight, history was made in the UFC as two women were allowed to compete in the UFC for the very first time. Now, granted, these two women competed in MMA in Strikeforce, but of course, Zuffa bought Strikeforce. So therefore, all the different fighters from Strikeforce are now moving to the UFC, and therefore so did the women division. However, Dana White was very reluctant for a long time to actually have women fight in the UFC. I don't know what he was, because he's chauvinistic. He didn't believe that women can really compete in the MMA at the level that men can. But in any event, I mean, women had been going to MMA, were in the undergrounds, or they weren't being showcased properly, or whatever the case may be. But in any event, it has happened tonight. And it was a women's championship fight. Now there was these two women actually competed in the UFC, and competed in the main event of anything. Well, before I get into that though, I'm going to read, of course, what happened on the card and different fights that happened. So here we go. Now, of course, these fights were on Facebook and different other preliminaries that happened, but there were some that were, one of them was actually very exciting. I'll call that out in a bit. But Nah-Shon, okay, now, let's see, it's called Nah-Shon Burrell versus Urijah, and the winner is Nah-Shon Burrell via unanimous decision. John Manley versus Neil Magny, and the winner is Neil Magny via unanimous decision. And Kenny Robertson versus Brock Jardine, and the winner is Kenny Robertson via a submission with a very unique leg stretch, leg bar submission. What was going on was he was about to get him in a near naked choke, and instead what happened was the guy's leg was way out there, and he was genius enough to not only grab the leg but to stretch it out, and then actually just stretch it and just pull it. And then the guy had no choice but to tap. And not only that, he actually even hurt the guy's leg to a point where he started limping. I mean, you could rip the guy's hamstrings with the way he just stretched that leg out and different things like that. So excellent attack on the leg and a good, excellent submission. I mean, just what Joe Rogan says, usually the way to spread the guy's legs out so he will not advance towards you or won't be able to escape. But he used it as an offensive weapon. So congratulations. Sam Stout versus Caros Fodor, and the winner is Sam Stout via split decision. That was a pretty good fight there. And now this one right there, even though it was a preliminary, that had a making of a main event fight, as Dennis Bermudez versus Matt Grice, and the winner would be a split decision as Dennis Bermudez. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, these two went at it back and forth. Sure, Dennis Bermudez got a little too excited, and he got hit a lot of times. And yeah, Mike Grice was getting hit, but at the same time, he kept maintaining his composure for a long time. He was, really getting him some clean hooks that knocked him on the ground. Dennis Bermudez got aggressive, took him down to the floor, things like that. But what really made a difference in the judges' eyes, I believe, in the third round was Matt Grice got very tired. Even his trainers have told Dennis Bermudez to go after him. And boy, did he went after them. I really thought in certain instances in the third round that he was going to knock Matt Grice out. I mean, just the way he just had him rocked so well. I mean, kicking him in the legs, he was all wobbling. And I thought Jardine was going to stop the fight, but he did not stop the fight. So he just let the fight go. And wow, good on her being on that one. I mean, that really was an excellent fight. I mean, this was a main event type of fight. These two guys went at it. They slugged each other out. There was some blood. It was just an excellent fight. Dennis Bermudez came out with a split decision victory. So congratulations on Dennis Bermudez on his victory there. And Michael Chiesa, actually Michael Chiesa versus Anton Kuivanen, and the winner via a submission is Michael Chiesa with a near rear naked choke. I mean, it almost went the whole first round. But did not make past the first round, because the thing about it was, sure, Anton Kuivanen was outstriking him for the most part. I mean, of course, Michael was striking him back and with different techniques and so forth. But what really was being in the end was he was able to take him down, have him in a body lock, to a point where he was actually able to have him from behind, and he actually had him grabbed with a choke and actually cinching in on him with a body lock from the bottom. But even though he was on top, but it was actually he got his back anyway, so didn't really matter at the very end. And of course, Anton Kuivanen had no choice but to tap out. So with a modernized, well, basically a rear naked choke, but it was actually just not exactly like a choke like this, but it was just a choke that he simply used, more leverage with the other arm and just squeezed it more so than actually really put his hand over in that way. So congratulations on that. All right, let's see here. And in this heavyweight bout, featured Brendan Schaub versus Lavar Johnson. And the winner via unanimous decision is Brendan Schaub. I mean, you guys were surprised on this? I mean, sure, it would have been more surprising if Lavar Johnson was not taken out as much and actually got the KO victory over Brendan Schaub. But Brendan Schaub knew better than that. He knew he was going to get a KO if he tried to stand in there with Lavar. So that was good on his part not to be standing up with Lavar that way. So that's why he went and took him down to the ground and just did the ground and pounds. But he did not advance so much to a point that the referee kept standing him up so many times, as well as so many times Brendan Schaub took him to the ground. But then he had, on top of that, there was even one incident even in the first round, he had Lavar in a anaconda choke. But the funny thing about it was Lavar kept punching Brendan Schaub in the head while he was getting choked. I mean, that's how nutty it was, this fight. It was crazy. I mean, Lavar Johnson did an excellent job defending himself. I mean, Brendan, he would have really lost it big time if he hadn't defended himself like he did. But needless to say, his groundwork as far as Lavar Johnson definitely needs a little more work. Brendan Schaub really got it down and got it down to a science the way he did it. Took the fight to the ground and he got booed for it. But you know what? At the end of the day, he got a W. He got his hand raised, and that's what counts. So congratulations, Brendan Schaub, on an excellent victory there. And Josh Koscheck versus Robbie Lawler, and the winner is Robbie Lawler via a TKO with strikes on the ground. I mean, wow. And the thing about it, there was some technical difficulties with the television that while I was watching where I was at, so I couldn't get to see, damn it, how Lawler got a KO Josh Koscheck. It would have been a classic to see. I'm not going to see it, during, on YouTube. It's so full, but it would just be so good to see, Rob Lawler had a victory against Josh Koscheck. And even though, sure, Josh Koscheck hasn't talked as much like he did when he was #1 contender for Georgia St. Pierre, but nonetheless, it couldn't have happened to a better person. So congratulations, Robbie Lawler, on your excellent victory. And Court McGee versus Josh Neer. And the winner is Court McGee via unanimous decision and great and successful welterweight debut on Court McGee's part. Also, of course, because of the difficulties of the television set that we were having, I didn't get to see the fight actually from the second round and on. So I missed the first round of that fight. But from what I was told, what I heard about it, Court McGee was still doing his thing, and he, struck Josh Neer. But Josh Neer did a good job in fighting back too. But it wasn't as effective as it should have been against Court McGee. So congratulations, Court McGee, on that. And in this fight right there is a rematch. It's actually Urijah Faber versus Ivan Menjivar 2. The first time when they fought somewhere in Canada in another organization, and they were very young back then. And I guess Ivan Menjivar's legal kick got him disqualified. So Urijah Faber won via disqualification. Now, this time, of course, the winner is Urijah Faber via a submission with a rear naked choke. I mean, basically what it all boils down to, well, actually a rear naked choke with a combination of a body lock, while Menjivar was stand up on his 2 feet. It all boils down to is this. Sure, they started with them standing up and everything else, but as soon as Urijah Faber took him down, Urijah just measured him and just started landing some nice elbow strikes to Menjivar, just plenty of elbow strikes. But it wasn't cutting him or anything like that, but he was still landing him to a point where he was still making some marks, where he was still making a difference in that fight. And then, of course, then he had him inside control. He even like had him. He even stood up while Ivan Menjivar was on the ground. He was trying to use his legs and try to hook Urijah Faber with either arm bars or triangles, but it wasn't working. And then Urijah Faber just came back down and got into, of course, guard again. But he got inside the guard just so he can do elbows. That's what he did. He got inside the guard on purpose so he got the elbows going. And then what happened was then during the scramble, Ivan got up, but he made a mistake. And rather than trying to get away from Urijah, he actually had Urijah lifted up on his shoulder, which was the beginning and the end, because then Urijah turned it around and actually got into the body lock from behind, and even cinching a rear naked choke on him, which Ivan Menjivar then was pressed against the fence. He had him really tight. Ivan Menjivar was going to pass out, so he tapped out instead. And Ivan Menjivar, poor guy, tough break for him, but Urijah Faber got a well-deserved victory with a rear naked choke. Wow, that was excellent on the California Kid's part. So congratulations, Urijah Faber. Yes. California. That's, hey, I like California too, so Ivan Menjivar, don't get me wrong, I've been to El Salvador too. El Salvador has been a pretty cool place as well. So, excellent fighters, excellent fight. Congratulations, Urijah Faber. What's next for him? Well, wow. I would like to either one or two things going to happen. Either Dominic Cruz need to either come out or, and start fighting Henderson Burrell for the, to see who's the undisputed Bantamweight champion, or it'll be a rematch between Henderson Burrell and Urijah Faber. We'll see what happens with that for the interim Bantamweight champion, and that would be pretty good to see that happen again, that those two fight again. Let's see what happens next. Anyways, in the co-main event, Lyoto Machida versus Dan Henderson, and the winner via split decision is Lyoto Machida. Now, are you guys really surprised on that? Well, some people may be, some people are not. I'm really not that surprised about it, because the way Lyoto Machida, he's always very good with his evasive techniques and everything else, and he waits until someone comes and strikes at him and so forth, and then he counters really well. And that's exactly what happened tonight. I mean, it has been that way basically throughout the 3 rounds. Of course, the first round, Lyoto Machida really had it under control as far as evading, kicking, and hitting Dan Henderson, and even tripped him and took him down once. So that was a takedown right there. And then, of course, in the second round was basically, well, it was all about evading and kicking and punching and various things like that with Dan Henderson. And Dan Henderson, but it wasn't a lot either. It wasn't like so significant amount of strikes, but those strikes that, of course, Lyoto hit Dan Henderson were significant enough to, bruise him up, to win him out, and things like that. Now, here's where it got tricky. In the third round, that's when Dan Henderson finally took Lyoto Machida down and did some ground and pounding, but it wasn't very effective because Lyoto Machida did an excellent job, and also he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt as well, too. So he has that under his credentials, and not to mention the way he showed how he defended himself on the ground was excellent on his part. And not only did he defend himself while Dan Henderson was, trying to ground and pound him to really no avail because he didn't do much damage, but he was even able to escape finally and was able to fight on his feet. And then that's when Lyoto Machida gave him a nice strong leg kick that nearly knocked Dan Henderson out of his equilibrium, so to speak, into standing up. And of course, he gave him a nice jump kick to the head. He ate it like a Pop-Tart, just like what Joe Rogan said. It was just a lot of things that just went wrong with Dan Henderson, and Dan Henderson got too frustrated. I mean, and I don't really think it was a lack of aggression on Dan Henderson's part. I just think it was just a lot of frustration on it, and Lyoto Machida just happened to just catch him in too many things, and he just was able to sideswipe him and everything like that. So Lyoto Machida deserved an excellent split decision victory. So now, is he going to fight John Jones again? I would like to see that happen again. Let's see what happens next time if he does fight John Jones. Either John Jones or Shonen, but I think more likely he'll fight John Jones again after he's done with Shonen. That's just how I see it. So, any event, moving on to the main event, UFC main event, as women's